Hello, everybody, and welcome to the LFC transfer room with myself, Louis. And today we've got a bit of a slightly later match review of the Carabao Cup first leg at Anfield as Liverpool drew 0-0 with Arsenal. Arsenal being down to 10 men after only 25 minutes. So I'm here today to discuss that and go through it and chat with you guys in the comments as well with Kris and James. Once again, we are back. The Holy
Three of us
Trinity.
again, isn't it?
Exactly. Kris, how are you doing?
All right, a bit tired after training. I've just been running around speaking Spanish for about 3 hours and trying to explain why you shouldn't pass to the nearest person. Because
You could have told James Milner and Henderson that last night.
Yeah. But just because here the idea of tiki taka is so rooted to the core of Spanish football that when you say don't pass to the closest person, it's like rewriting a 1970s fax machine. I mean, I've got no idea at times what's going on and why we can't stop this, but such is the life of a coach.
Yeah, and James, how are you this evening?
I'm good. Finally out of lockdown after the COVID, so I was able to do the exciting food shop. Yep, that's pretty much what I've been able to do today. So, you've got.
What's your local? Is it a Lidl, an Aldi?
Stuff like that. So,
what's your local? Is it an Aldi, a Lidl, a Tesco? What's your big shop?
Asda is the nearest one.
One of the most terrible stores. Londis is pretty bad.
Londis.
I wouldn't fancy doing a full shop at Londis. That would be a fortune.
It's like trying to do one at Spa, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's the price of an M&S, but just without the M&S quality.
Yeah.
But enough about our weekly shops, gents. Let's hop straight into it. Hyla, good to see you. We'll get onto that in a moment. I do want to talk about the aftermath of the game because there's certainly been quite a big one I've noticed on social media, especially. But before we get too off topic with that, let's just jump straight into the game. I was on the watch along. Hello, Anthony, as well. And I said as soon as Xhaka got sent off, I couldn't even be that happy about it because I just knew we would struggle. And that's exactly what happened. It happened against Chelsea as well. I think what stat did you find, James, that we've played against? Like what?
Yeah, I was trying to dig it up, and I'm sure Anthony or Helior will be able to dig it up. But it's something ridiculous. Like in the last 5 games where someone's been sent off, we've only scored 2 goals, and they've both been penalties.
Yeah,
I was trying to.
Both the Atletico games got red cards, didn't they?
Oh, I mean, it was Granit Xhaka being Granit Xhaka, but for some reason we can't seem to break down 10 men.
Yeah,
I just knew nothing was going to happen when they went down to 10.
Yeah.
I can't wait for Kris to tell me why that happens.
Yeah, I will come to Kris with a few questions, a deep dive into the tactics of the game. But I think we could all agree, although we were missing the AFCON lads, obviously Mane and Salah in particular, as well as Keita. Does anyone disagree that the midfield was the biggest problem in this game?
I mean, there was a lot of problems in this game, no? But yeah.
Yeah, don't get me wrong, but I think if the midfield was more balanced, and if a certain Thiago was playing,
you could say it's the midfield, but is the midfield the creative force for us, or is it our midfield is just to get it to the people that do creative things? Because one shot by the 92nd minute, pretty much the defense did what they needed to do, which was not concede a goal. Everything else is up for grabs, really, in my view, in terms of not performing well enough.
No, I'm not suggesting that anyone had a good game particularly, except for Van Dijk and Alisson and maybe one or two others. But not to pin it all on Thiago's absence, but I think if he was starting in this game, it could have turned out differently. But yeah. You're right. Against a low block, we've struggled for as long as I can remember, really, but in particular this season. So, Kris, from what you saw yesterday, why was that?
Well, we've got to remember I think that we can break this down into two categories, and this is really important to try to understand. We used to play with three very functional midfielders, three holding midfielders who were basically, I think you said, Louis, that they were the water carriers, so to speak. They hold their position, keep the center of the pitch, and then we used to let Robertson and Alexander-Arnold basically become flying wingers and then cross balls in. The problem with that idea is that if they play free at the back, or if they basically decide to play in a low block, it's just header and away balls all day, right? And if you haven't got a towering centre forward in there, a Dzeko or someone like this, it's very difficult from wide angles and balls into the box to score. So that would have been the problem in the past. You're just slinging in balls against a low block. It's very, very difficult. Notoriously, we have problems against Burnley for that reason. Then, if you look at it in the modern day, it's a little bit different because we're not so much cross-happy. And I think it was Nico Williams who swung in a cross late in the game and it caused havoc, and Minamino skied one from 7 yards. But the problem that we're having now is that, as I think one of you, James or Louis, referred to, there's not that creativity in the center of the pitch, nor is the one person to go past another person. Going past another person creates so many problems for the opposition. It's unreal, because then the central defender has to come out, and that's where you get your spaces. We didn't have anyone going past anyone, and nor did we have any creativity. And I think that's been our biggest problem. When Thiago's out, we lack creativity. When Elliot's not out, we lack creativity. So, goes back to the days of trying to buy Fekir, Teixeira, Götze, Brandt. Klopp knows we need creativity. And I think that was the biggest problem yesterday. There just wasn't anyone who could deliver that spark in the centre of the pitch, or even out wide for that matter.
And I think that's a good point, because with Thiago, who is our main creative outlet in the midfield these days, and it's a shame his injury record is as poor as it is. It's not even a case of him being the person who assists a goal or scores a goal, which is something someone identified on Twitter. But he's the man who's so free to play those forward passes, to break the lines, to force the opposition to face their own goal, which is just what we didn't do at all last night. Everything was in front of Arsenal, getting it out wide, then launching a cross in. I think that was a big problem for us. But Matty's just joined us. How are you doing, Matty? You were obviously at the game yesterday. How was the atmosphere there?
Oh, the atmosphere has been grim for the whole season, to be honest with you. That Leicester game in the quarters is probably the best the atmosphere has been all year, but it's just the certain shouts, just like people are shouting shoots when anyone gets the ball. And yesterday, towards the end, I can get it, but people are shouting for Joel Matip to shoot after like 3 minutes, and you're just like, turn it in. But aside from that, the game was abysmal. But when I was walking up to the ground and you see the midfielder, Henderson and Milner, you just know that it wasn't going to be exciting. The two are like them players. They should never start together. Personally, I think the Ox or Jones probably should have started in that midfield yesterday, but it just looked dead. I think you can tell that the side's recovering from this COVID outbreak, not training and stuff. Like Trent was abysmal yesterday. Nico, when he came on, played best in Trent in the 20 minutes he played, and Trent did in the whole game. Some of the subs for me was crazy. I don't understand why you bring Joe Gomez on when you're trying to win a game of football. But other than that, like it was disappointing, and their fans were singing about going to Wembley at the end. And to be honest with you, like they got a lot of hate for that. But I think if Liverpool turn up to the Emirates and play like that, Arsenal probably are going to Wembley, which is annoying because this is our first chance of silverware for the season. Could potentially be the only bit of silverware we do get. Hopefully not. Hopefully we get the FA Cup and the Champions League. But it was just a very disappointing evening all around, really. At the end of the game, I was just thinking, like, why put Cade Gordon on the bench if he's not going to get any minutes? He could have made a difference. I strongly believe that yesterday. And to be honest with you, I would have rather seen some of the kids play yesterday, because at least they have a bit more fight in them. Like, it just looked as though half the players just couldn't be bothered.
No, I agree. And in the watch along, we were all saying that Cade Gordon should have came on for 10, 15 minutes because you just don't know what's going to happen. You know, they play without fear. As we saw against Shrewsbury, he is someone who just looks to beat his man, create a little bit of space and get a shot away, which is something we desperately needed. Although Curtis Jones did offer that a little bit as well when he came on. But just going back to the midfield, obviously Fabinho, but then the two of Henderson and Milner. Matty, we've seen Klopp. I feel like we've seen Klopp do this on a few occasions in some bigger games. He reverts back to type with that kind of workhorse midfield. Do you think that ultimately Xhaka getting the red card almost completely undermined everything that Liverpool prepared for and then kind of rendered that midfield three null and void in a way?
Yeah, definitely. I think I seen a stat the other day or this morning, or one of you might have said it, that Liverpool only scored 2 goals against 10 men. In whenever we go up against 10 men, that Chelsea game at the start of the season screams out to me as well. We were terrible when they got the man sent off. But for me, I feel as though I couldn't believe that team walked out again at half time because it should have been changes made. We can't play against 10 men. As good as Milner and Henderson can be individually, they just like I call it the Brexit midfield. To be honest with you, like it just should never play together. The two alike, like they're both. If you put them in with someone else, you need someone creative. They both aren't very creative. And Jordan Henderson yesterday, all I was crying out for him was just pass the ball forward, and it just didn't happen. But there's not much more he could have done because there was nothing creative going forward in front of him. And like Minamino, I think he's the only player I know who runs into spaces where he knows the ball's not going to end up. It's like he's scared to receive the football.
Well, that's a good place to sort of move on slightly. James, the front three, Firmino, Jota, and Minamino, they didn't have a great deal to work with, I felt like, behind them, but you earlier made the point that they maybe weren't doing as much as they could in front to create those openings.
Yeah, and I mean, I completely forgot Jota was playing until you just mentioned it then. And I think, oh, what did Jota do? And Jota got the ball really deep, ran at the defence until he got totaled. And loads of them went a lot deeper. And I think the problem that we had was no one trusted the midfield to get them in, so they didn't make the runs. They just came further back. And whilst they're in a low block, we're just playing this line of 8 in front of their midfield 4. And I'm trying to think of a time recently where we've beaten their left back and crossed from the byline. Everything's, do you know, if you're playing a low block, you know how to set up against Liverpool. You put your 2 centre-backs in the middle. You try and block that edge of the 18-yard box where Trent and Robbo cross from. And then you try to cover the ball inside, which is where the wingers come to try and sort of take the cross. And as long as you've got your 2 centre-backs in the middle, you can defend against Liverpool pretty easily. Because when we're that predictable. And I remember I was thinking back to when we were the first 20 minutes of a game, people would just try to survive. This is, a couple of years ago where we were just scary. And It's because we would attack from every angle. Mane, Salah, Firmino, they'd all switch positions, they'd all appear in different positions. We're being very regimented at the moment. I can't think of a time really where Mane's spent a decent period at centre forward or at right wing or anything like that. I think we're being very, let's go back to basics because we're not doing very well, but our basics are very predictable now. And that's kind of what's worrying me in our attack, because you've just got to plan for it and hope that one of our great players does one of the great things you'd expect them to do, which is fine if you're trying to get top 4. It's not fine if you're trying to beat Man City where you can drop like two losses a season. That's not going to work because someone will have a good game.
It's interesting. Sorry, go on, Matty.
I felt sorry for Jota because he shouldn't play on the right. He's never really played on the right. He should be playing on the left or down the middle. I think the smartest option yesterday would have been to drop Bobby back and then put Jota in the middle, maybe put Ox on the right. Jota's very effective from the left or down the middle. I don't think I've seen him play on the right. And after yesterday, I never, ever want to see him play on the right again. I think he needs to play on the left or down the middle. And maybe it's a good time to have a learning curve. We got through it. Still another leg. We've still got like 4 weeks without Mane and Salah. So then hopefully Jota never goes on that right again, because he did look lost. He just didn't know what to do, and I did feel sorry for him because that wasn't his position.
Yeah,
And James, just going back to what you said, it's interesting that you say that it feels like we're almost going back to basics, because I wrote down before we came on here that it looks like Milner as well, because he just hasn't played that much, but Henderson as well. I know that we a lot of us here and on social media and in Liverpool in general feel that Henderson's really dropped off this season and is heading towards becoming a rotation player, but he's not stupid, and I think he will know that his performances, especially yesterday, haven't been up to scratch. But I think that's also then negatively affecting their game as well. They're so low on confidence. There was so many chances I could think of where they could have done what I've seen them do countless times: float a little ball over the top, play a nice through ball, but instead they were playing side to side, back and forth. And Kris, coming from a coaching perspective, how do you potentially try and reinstill that confidence for them?
Well, let me just address what Matty was talking about there, because honestly, I couldn't agree more. That game for me was absolutely crying out for someone to run the channels, get in between the centre back and the right back or the left back, and just run in between them and put balls behind them and make them think, give them difficulties, put balls over the top, balls in behind, and just create problems for them. And if you get onto one and cut it back, it's likely to be a goal. So, I mean, I don't know. Again, I come back to Divock Origi being on holiday or whatever he's deciding to do. I think he's trying to convince us to do.
Waiting for semi-final. Oh, well, that was a semi-final. Shit.
Honest to God, if he's not playing in a semi-final of a cup competition, why is he at the club? Why is he at the club? Now, I'm a big squad player believer, but if he's not turning up for that game, go sign for another club, because that's the only reason he's there, let's be honest. In relation to building confidence, it's a really tricky thing, because essentially what you're saying ignore Thiago, Mane and Salah on here, and I'm going to play you in a different position. I'm going to play you in a position, but come on, we're good. Doesn't work that way. Really doesn't work that way. The way they can start to turn a corner, in my opinion, is if they're given a more functional, more of a, not a back to basics way, because that's a bad way to frame it, but if they're given a functional way to play. Okay. So for example, when Mane was going through a bad spot, what we said is, forget about going on the left wing, just come in like a number 9. And Mane started firing in loads of headers. And because he was running in like a number 9 and cutting in like an inverted forward. When Bobby Firmino was going through a bad step, we said, okay, look, don't worry about the goals. Just connect things. With, for example, Trent, we're all well aware that he plays as more or less a right mid and doesn't defend as much anymore. And Klopp comes out and goes, what are you on about? So, personally, I have to agree with Matty on this one. I think that you have to go back to what the players know best. You put Jota on the left. You say to Minamino, you're going to play a bit deeper, for example, or you're going to play on the right. And we start playing more to the strengths rather than the collective core. Does that make sense? That looked like a team to protect the collective core, to say, right, we're protecting like a FIFA thing where everybody's got 90, but it equals out better. No. Jota on the left, and let's try and get a back post header. That type of thing, for me personally.
Just getting through some of the comments. Hyla says, of all the Liverpool players, Matip to me looked like the most willing player to move forward and take risks, which is absolutely right. I mean, I don't know what the stats say, but I don't remember him coming forward as many times as he did yesterday. He seemed absolutely desperate to create something, and that's got to be a worry for Liverpool with AFCON only really just kicking off, that our most creative player in a major cup semi-final was a centre back. I mean, Matty, you were there as well and you saw it. how worried are you for the next few games?
I honestly think we play like that against Brentford when we get battered on Sunday. Like, I'm worried, to be honest with you. I keep checking all Egypt's fixtures, hoping I'm hoping that they lose, because basically with the AFCON, you've only got to win one game, you qualify. The top three go through anyway. It's stupid, really. But I do hope Egypt get knocked out. If they do, we'd have Salah back by next weekend, which is like a benefit. But is that likely? Probably not. I think Senegal and Guinea are through with, so that's Keita and Mane through. But I do think that Mane will probably win it. So I think we're without him for the long haul. It's worrying. If I was Salah's agent, I would have been on the phone to John Henry yesterday saying, "Are you sure you don't want to give him 400? Because it's going to go up to 500 if it carries on like that. Like, it's ridiculous." And how many years did we go being a one player team throughout, like back in the day with Stevie? And it just feels as though that's what we are at the minute, because you've took even Mane, you can cope without him sometimes. You're taking Salah out. It was just, we never looked like we had scored yesterday, and there's just so many little stupid issues that need to be addressing. Like when Curtis Jones came on against Shrewsbury, he was fantastic at corners, fantastic. So why, when he's on the pitch, is Andy Robertson still taking a corner when I don't think he's ever beat the first man? It's frustrating to watch him, and I'm massively worried, to be honest with you, about the AFCON, but because I don't think it'll even sway John Henry into getting his checkbook out. I just think it's just like cope with it. But if it was me next week, I'd play a few more kids, because I feel like the kids want it more, to be honest with you.
But speaking of, well, not a kid necessarily, but Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain was left on the bench, and as far as I know, there was nothing wrong with him. Q-Mars, it's good to see you again in the comments. I will get to your comment because that's a good talking point, actually. But James, do you think there's anything more to the fact that Ox wasn't started and wasn't maybe brought on sooner? Does it feel like Klopp's given up on him slightly? It just felt weird, or was it just that he felt that midfield was better?
He's given up on him. Klopp's very loyal, and I think when he expects something to happen, he goes to the people that he trusts the most. And let's be really honest, there is nothing that you could not trust about Milner and Henderson. Yes, you wouldn't expect them to give you a 9 out of 10 and do anything, but if he says, "I want you to do this," they will say yes, and they will give 100% to do it, whether they're good enough or not. Both of them have proved it, and that's what Klopp looks for. I think Liverpool have this strange January lull as well, don't they? For some reason, I think 3 or 4 of the last years, we've gone through a really bad patch in January. And I don't know what it is. Klopp's even said, I think 2 years ago when we went through losing a load of games, he doesn't know what's happened. So I think we're all a bit raw at the moment anyway, because we're going through this typical Liverpool bad patch. And then it'll all come together at the end of the season, hopefully, when we've got to suddenly put a lot of games together and we'll play as we play. But part of it for me is Klopp's insistence on running quite a small squad. He likes it. Obviously, I trust Klopp. You know, this isn't a Klopp out or anything like that. I trust him entirely. But you look at, with the COVID situation, with the AFCON situation, what Chelsea can do, what Man City can do. You know, we're talking about bringing on Gordon. When you look at Man City, they've got a whole raft of people that they could bring on in the wingers position who are international players. We are creating a rod for our own backs in what is in essence a perfect storm of a big COVID outbreak, locking up a load of people, bringing them back, not being able to train and stuff like that. So I think it's just bad timing and a bad situation for us. And, you know, I don't think we should go full Arsenal fan and completely panic. Klopp will plan this out and we'll sort this out. This isn't a point for us to shout, scream and say the world's going to end. But there's something that needs to be balanced with terms of size of squad. I definitely think we probably need a few experienced people in more attacking positions to come in. And I don't think the Ox is the solution, but I think the Ox should have been integrated at halftime.
And building off of what you just said about overcoming this stint, something that, as you said, apart from last season, because obviously injuries played a massive part, but something we have noticed, there does always seem to be a bit of a lull this time of year. And bearing in mind, we really need to get a trophy this season. If we go trophyless this season, it is an absolute failure for me, even if we get top 4. So QMars, thank you for the comment, says this: I think we have the tools to play a 4-4-2 diamond with Taki on the tip of the diamond. I don't know why the persistence with 4-3-3 when we don't have the tools for it. So this I find interesting because as long as Klopp's been here, he's never changed the tactic. And I don't think any of us particularly would go head to head with Klopp on what he should do with his tactics. But I'm interested to hear from all three of you. We can start with Matty and then move clockwise. Do you think now's time to change just for a little bit our formation, try out a different thing? Do you think Klopp would even consider it? You know, what are your thoughts for these next few weeks?
It's a tough one, really. Because I've always said we don't need a system change. We notoriously said that. But I do think something needs to change. A 4-4-2 diamond is interesting. I probably wouldn't go with Taki on the tip of the diamond, though, to be honest, because
isn't it just our 4-3-3 with the false 9?
Yep.
More or less, yeah. But I wouldn't put Taki down the middle ever. He can't finish ever. So I'd probably put José there. But I do think, I don't know, I feel as though we just need to put a bit more faith in some of the other players. Like against Brentford, I wouldn't start. I'd start probably Jones on the left side of midfield with José on the left, Bobby in the false 9, and the Ox down the right. I think that would have been a lot of a much more creative and stronger side, even if that still is in the 4-3-3. Because to be fair to Bobby, yesterday he made some fantastic off the ball movements. He was good on the ball. He doesn't look like he's out of confidence. He does look like he's in confidence and stuff. So Bobby and José are nailed on. I think the only positions that we did get wrong yesterday, I wouldn't enter crisis over it. I just think we shouldn't start Henderson and Milner together, and Minamino just isn't good enough, really, if we're going to be brutally honest. He just really isn't good enough. And it's I was saying yesterday, it's mad that this is the fella who turned Van Dijk inside out in the Champions League the other year, because he just looks a shadow of that. And maybe he should have been thinking like, right, I've got 4 weeks here of start. I need to impress, and he just didn't. So I think for me, you take him and say Milner out, and you put the Ox and Jones in. I think that instantly a bit more creativity, because to be fair to Curtis, when he came on yesterday, he was fantastic. He actually wanted to drive forward. He's skillful on the ball. The Ox as well, when he wants to be, can be fantastic for us. So I think that's the only changes we need to make. It's just worrying because Liverpool, in my opinion, have got the best starting 11 in world football. But then after that, it's nothing.
So, Kris, I'll come to you next. What do you make of that?
Well, I agree with James. It's just 4-4-3 with a false 9. Because what you end up doing is you end up basically saying to the two forwards that they end up splitting and protecting. So I think personally there needs to be some serious conversations within the club relating to game management. Because at the moment, there doesn't seem to be anyone who's, and I've included Milner and Henderson here, who's just got that little bit of nous about them. So, give you an example. Klopp's Dortmund team used to lose the ball on purpose. Sounds mad, sounds counterintuitive, but it makes sense. Because what they used to do is you just pump the ball up, and then the opposition would have the ball in right back, for example, and then they just hound them. Right? That's an incredibly effective tactic if you've got players who can rob the ball high up the pitch. Minamino is a workhorse and can rob the ball. Jota, famously described by Linders as a presser of blah, blah, blah. And Firmino's a presser. What we should have done is just let them play football. Insist that they play football. How do you do that? You just give them the ball and retreat. You give up possession for 10 minutes, for 5 minutes, and you watch one of their young players lose the discipline and start attacking. And that's when you get the space. We weren't intelligent enough just to think, how do we get them to play? Because if they play, They don't low block, and then we can score. Nobody in that team thought that. Nobody. And that surprises me more than anything, right? Because I'm not the best coach in the world. I'm sorry to say, guys. I know that you think that. I know you've got pictures of me on your bedroom walls and stuff. It's just not true. But if I'm thinking that, and it makes perfect logical sense, someone should have been saying, stop it with the possession. We do not need Joel Matip playing as a bloody number 10, for God's sake. Just stop it. Give them the ball, and let's see what happens as a result of them playing a little bit. I hope I communicated what I tried to say there, because sometimes that it's difficult to understand, I think, sometimes.
Well, I just want to stay on you quickly with that, and I will come to you in a moment, James. But yeah, obviously, it looks like nobody identified that who was on the Liverpool bench or in the Liverpool team, and we've already discussed that it is an ongoing issue when we play against a low block. So, why do you think other avenues aren't being assessed? Because it does seem like we have the same approach every time, and we're getting the same outcome, and that's the definition of insanity, almost doing the same thing, expecting a different outcome.
Yeah, it's almost like quarantines. No, so imagine a perfect example. Imagine you're talking to Granit Xhaka. Arteta's having a conversation with Arteta, and he just sits him down at the beginning of the game and he goes, "Look, mate, you're a lunatic. Can you just not get a red card in an important game?" Granit Xhaka goes, yeah. He goes, no, seriously, please don't kick someone in the head. He said, yeah. And then Granit Xhaka goes and kicks someone within the first bloody 5 minutes, usually. The problem really isn't Klopp and his communication, because we've seen Klopp's ability to change normal players into fantastic players. There was a moment when Divock Origi looked like a world beater before he got injured. So the problem is that, I think, as James has alluded to, and Matty's alluded to, the fact of the matter is that first 11 just haven't got it in them to really make that breakthrough. Is Minamino thinking the things that he should be thinking? Is he on the ball as much as he should be? Obviously not. And if Minamino was as intelligent as he could be, he would be incredible. And that's the difference between normal and good at that level. They've all got the technique. If me and you play with James Milner now, he will make us look stupid. Honestly, he's a world-class footballer. He'd be amazing. We'd be like, what? I've seen Kaka playing videos with normal people 5-a-side, and he's just incredible. But have you got it here? And that's the difference. So I don't think that it's not being communicated. I just think that they're not taking it on board, unfortunately.
Well, James, with all of that in mind, I come to you last, but by no means least, on what you think over these next few weeks with the AFCON lot still away. Would you expect to see any changes? Do you want any drastic changes to the starting 11 or the formation?
I think I just want us to take a few more risks. You know, yes, we can pin teams in and stuff like that. But as Kris alluded to, you know, Brendan Rodgers used to pin teams in when he was Liverpool manager, and the ball just used to go back and forth, and we never took a shot. Or we take shots from the edge of the box and stuff like that. So it's just, I guess what I'm hoping to see is just take a few more risks. Brentford worries me because the way that they played against us is they just gave the ball to Ivan Toney and put him in a head-to-head contest against Trent Alexander-Arnold in the air and dominated him, because Trent's not great in the air. It's one of his weaknesses. But at least they'll attack so we can attack back, because that's where we're strongest, when we're attacking back or counter-attacking other teams. I think I just want to see us be a little bit more inventive than just cross balls from the edge of the 18-yard box constantly into the middle. You know, it's not even like we've got Jan Kola or, you know, the 6'8" guy in the middle. We're trying to get 5'5" guys to win headers by just being so bloody good at crossing the ball. It's not a percentage game. It's not like So we've got to do something different. And I think that's what I want to see. I just want to see us do different things. And if we get it wrong, we get it wrong, but at least make it an interesting game of football and just watching balls being crossed and headed away for 90 minutes, which is what the other day was.
Brentford's a difficult game, eh? They haven't lost big all season. I mean, talk about making the most of what you've got. Jesus Christ, they're playing.
What a game it was last time as well. That 3-0 was a great game.
Yeah, but it's game management, isn't it? Again, James, it's game management again. 3-3 against Brentford just shows you're not managing the game. There's nobody just thinking, like this is Ivan Toney's at the back post and there's two lads. Just get it out. I don't care where it is. And then we reset. I remember when we won the league, there was some amazing defending. Not because it was incredible, because at times Joe Gomez just went, not having any of this. Just put it into Rosehead and we'll reset. But now there's this like idea of maybe Van Dijk's starting to believe his own hype. I don't know, because you need to just put the ball out occasionally and just let the team reset, because then the other team come on you and then you can hit them. If you're always recycling the ball and you've always got 90% of possession, you just end up in a Barcelona against Celtic moment without Messi in the team. It does not work like that. Sometimes you've got to, as Klopp said, got to bring them down to your level and beat them there. And they're just trying to play. They're trying to play in a way that just isn't effective unless you've got, I don't know, Barcelona's 2018.
Well, a lot to go on there. So if any of the Liverpool management or players come across this video, they'll know what to put in place against Brentford on Sunday. So we've got a chance to get the crowd back on side, so to speak, which is what I just want to touch on briefly. In the next part is on the subsequent backlash that we received from it, particularly FSG in terms of spending, contract situations, transfers. Matty, I'm keen to hear from you on this, because I know that you're kind of like me. You're a bit on the fence with FSG. I'm just interested to. Am I correct on that?
I was until
you was. Okay, yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. Has yesterday changed your mind on that?
The past 6 or so months has changed my mind on it. I've always been on the fence because I'll always thank FSG because I feel like they've put Liverpool back in the modern era. Similar to what Gerard Houllier done. I feel like FSG and Klopp have done that, with the new training facilities, one of the best in the world, expanding the stadium. We needed that. We couldn't carry on with a 45,000-seater stadium being one of the biggest clubs in the world. We had to expand that. But if I would have known doing that would result in us being weaker on the pitch, I don't know how I would have felt about it, because it's sad, really, because Man City laid the scope for the rest of the Premier League, really, with all this oil money, and it just, they can buy who they want. They have all these dodgy deals. They're meant to be one of the richest clubs in the world now, but they still can't sell the stadium out. How does that work? It's just all dodgy money coming through. Now, everyone always says they wouldn't want owners like that because it's unethical. However, you don't become a billionaire by being ethical. So I refuse to believe that FSG are ethical as well. So I do think they do need to get rid now, and Liverpool need to. They've took Liverpool as far as I strongly believe they can take them. If Jurgen Klopp wasn't the manager, I don't think Liverpool would get into the top 4 with FSG, because Klopp's done wonders, and I feel as though maybe Klopp's done a lot better than FSG ever imagined, because he's working with, bar that first 11, an average group of players who none of them players on our bench could walk into any side in the Premier League, put it that way. There's sides they would not get into. So I do feel as though we need new owners who can come in and invest in it. Liverpool, when we won the Premier League and Champions League, didn't go and buy anyone, didn't proper strengthen from a position of power. And it's the worst thing we ever done. When we won that Champions League, any player in the world would have joined Liverpool that summer. When we won the Premier League the following year, again, anyone would have joined Liverpool that year. And we literally didn't sign any. I know we signed Thiago and whatever, and Jota and stuff, but since then it's just went downhill, and we've only signed players based Van Dijk and Alisson. They only come because Coutinho went. Would we have had them if Coutinho didn't go? Probably not. So this sell to buy model, it worked until all this money's been plowed into the Premier League. You've got Everton and Aston Villa spend the money in January, and Liverpool, who 100% makes more money in line with FFP than these teams, just won't spend. Now, how could anyone watch that performance yesterday or watch any performance when one of our first 11 goes off? It's always a weaker player who comes on and think, yeah, we can win stuff with this. And I honestly think Liverpool could probably win the Champions League this year because Klopp's the manager. Other than that, could we win anything if we didn't have Jurgen Klopp there? I don't think we would under FSG, and I do strongly believe that maybe once the stand's done, they might sell up, because I feel as though they know the fans aren't on side. The Super League was probably the tip of the iceberg for many fans. And then all this Salah rigmarole for his contract, that's wound fans up as well, because we've got the best player in the world at Liverpool now, and we're arguing with him over a bit of wages. Like, it works out, I think, 80 million over the 5 years extra that he wants. I challenge John Henry to go and find a player as good as Salah for 80 million and wages over 5 years. It's not happening.
Mm.
I've got to disagree there with Matty. I've got to disagree completely. Roman Abramovich is a completely clean guy and has nothing dodgy about him whatsoever, Matty. I mean, quite honestly, you questioning that man it's a bit of a statement about your own personal character more than anything else.
Are you worried he's going to come around and knock on your door?
You know what, mate? You can never be too sure with Russians, as the Americans always say, as they're invading countries. No, I honestly couldn't agree with Matty more about the old ethics thing. Obviously, there are certain countries who still have slavery, so to speak, and that's not good. Of course, it's not. But there's countries in the world that are acting like dictatorships right now. There are countries in the world where you can't say anything, for example, and if you do, the government's going to put you in a place that's not so nice. So, I mean, it's all very context based. Regarding the team, I agree with Matty. FSG have done an amazing job to get us where we are. But the fact of the matter is, if we ever want to compete in any way with Newcastle, Manchester City, because Newcastle are now in the conversation, with Newcastle, Manchester City, Manchester United, Chelsea, if we want to compete with any of these, there needs to be something that changes in Liverpool. Now, I don't know if they didn't sell to the Saudis, because I suspect the Saudis tried to buy Liverpool. I don't know enough about that, but there was a lot of rumours about that. So if they're not going to sell to the Saudis for God knows how many millions, what's going on here? Like, I don't really understand. Because as Matty says, this can only last so long. We can only wish that we're going to pick up a Mane or a Salah in the future, or a Firmino from underneath him by a Leverkusen or some club like this. So yeah, unfortunately, I disagree with the idea, but I agree with the practicalities. It has to go that way.
Well, for me, and I'm kind of with Matty as well in terms of these last few weeks and months have tilted me towards FSG out, but I'm not like jumping on the bandwagon of, hashtag FSG out and, protesting or anything like that. I think if they were to complete the stand and then sell up this summer, they'd leave with no particular hard feelings from me, apart from the Super League. I think they've done a brilliant job of getting us to where they are. And as you said, Matty, they've taken us as far as they can take us, which isn't a bad thing. They've done a brilliant job from that sense. But the longer they keep hold of us with the mentality that they've got, the more they're going to undo the work that they've done over these past 4 or 5 years.
What are we worth now? $1 billion? 1.2 billion? They bought us for 300 million?
Exactly. So I don't really know what they're holding on for, similar to Kris.
Well, they've got Redbird Capital involved, haven't they? They've got like a percentage share now, Redbird Capital, and they've alluded that they'd want more share and stuff like that. And I think the problem you've got is unless you own a country, you can't afford a football club.
They used the money Redbird invested, though, to buy the Pittsburgh Penguins.
Well, yeah.
Didn't use that for Liverpool, so...
Pittsburgh.
And they're meant to be buying another sports team, aren't they, soon?
Yeah, so we're clearly not their focus, are we? Which is what we need. We need someone to come in, like with Newcastle, who, it's going to take them a while to get into the proper conversation. I think they're at least 5 years of good infrastructure away from an actual, top half of the Premier League, Champions League conversation.
But it could be worse. We could be the United American model, which is just leverage the money, the club for every penny it's got and plunge it into uncontrollable debt.
We don't have enough money to do that.
Yeah. But, they could American Stock Exchange, they can start to really sort of leverage the debt and take the money out. And they're not doing that.
Yeah.
It's
fair.
tricky.
They're just not great. They're fair. I think. But for me, I mean, it does worry me a lot because at the end of the day, the country thing is probably right. How we need someone who's a country essentially to buy us. And, when you look at countries around the world, we've got Saudi Arabia, Qatar involved, these type of countries who are oil rich and they have money at the moment before we start banning oil and everything goes electricity based. But realistically, who's going to buy us? You know what I mean?
Alfonso Bezos, he's rich, isn't he? He could afford it.
That would be amazing, wouldn't
Sponsored by Amazon.
Sponsored by yeah.
I wonder what that would look like on the shirts. Just thinking. But...
I don't know. Or Gates now.
He's a philanthropist. He's giving it all
away.
Ayesh
has made a good point. I mean, I don't know too much about it. We're talking about the Bayern system, alluding to the fact that they're a bit more self-sustained. And Heiler earlier kind of questioned that whole idea that clubs at the top just really can't be self-sustaining. Like there's just not enough self-generating revenue. So, and I think that's true to an extent with obviously Man City. They're signing business deals with their own companies. And
and you've got to remember Real Madrid and Barcelona are owned by governments.
Yeah. So, I don't think any of us are financial experts in that sense, but is that the only chance we've got really is waiting to be bought by, as you said, Kris, a country?
The problem with the Bayern model is that Bayern is obviously in a section of Germany which is incredibly wealthy. I mean, that section of Germany make the rest of the Germany look like, I don't know, Liverpool to St. Helens, which is a local reference of not a very rich place. James has got a face like he lives in St. Helens.
No, I was reading comments. Sorry.
So, but obviously we don't have that in Liverpool. It's a very working class city and so on, and I think that that's where we are. In relation to the whole romantic part of football, I don't think football's been romantic since genuinely the end of the 2000s when Abramovich got involved. I just think it's changed. I think it's become a monster in of itself, and it's not gonna go back until FIFA stop being corrupt, and obviously that's gonna happen soon, any day now, of course.
I think you're right, and I think one of the problems you've got with any of these situations is the richer the people that get involved, the more the prices get inflated. So even if FIFA are going to release this cap on agent fees and stuff like that, the agents are just going to increase the percentage they take off players, so they'll get it in a different way. So they'll get 10% on every. So this whole snowball isn't going to stop. It's just whether you can afford to play. And unfortunately, the more and more rich people get involved, the less likely that you can play the game or get the people that you want. Buying a lot of their money comes from merchandising and stuff like that. They have an entire beast of a merchandising. They actually make more than any other club in world football on merchandising and keep ticket prices down at £10. They've got a really good model, and I think it is a really interesting model, but they're competing in a league where there is them and one other.
Yeah,
and the
they're
Premier
at the
League
top
spent
already.
£1 billion in transfers and outstripped every other league in world football 4 years in a row. So whilst the Bayern model's good, it wouldn't win you the Premier League.
Yeah.
I think the Premier League's in danger of becoming like the German league, though, with Newcastle and City, because it's them against everyone else, and you might get an odd team win the league every few years, like you do in Germany, because there's that much. I mean, I don't think Newcastle will win the league for a good few years. They've got to stay up this year first, and I still don't think Chris Wood's the answer to them staying up, but eventually Newcastle will come good. Like, they will come good. They have got enough money to make these mistakes. If you look at City when they first got bought out, they made these mistakes. They went and bought like Joe and Robinho and players who they were just names really. And Newcastle will make mistakes, but they will eventually come good. And in 5, maybe 10 years, Newcastle will still have all that money, and City will still have all their money and still do dodgy deals. Like, that's them City deals, like Chris said. It's just they're literally investing in themselves through other companies, and that's all Newcastle will do. Because Saudi Arabia technically have not bought Newcastle, it was the investment fund. The country of Saudi Arabia can now sponsor Newcastle, and they can say, we're sponsoring the Impact. And then you've got all this money. So FFP is pointless, because it's like, you just sponsor yourself through another company. It takes 5 minutes to set a company up, and then you just say, well, they're sponsoring me. You've got to get a logo and stick it on a shirt and say they paid £1 billion. It's ridiculous.
I'll set a company up for him, and I'll just take a small fee.
That's ridiculous.
And yeah, it's good points all round. I was literally about to say something, but it's just completely gone from my head. So I will instead read through some comments. Ayush says, the thing is, though, we don't need a massive splurge. We didn't need a massive splurge. We needed a quality addition every summer window and replace the outgoing ones to just stay fresh and have an organic growth. And that reminded me of what I was going to say, is that, do you think that potentially part of FSG's thinking, apart from being cheap, is that, you know, we can go out and make a marquee signing, but to get a return on it, which would be to win trophies, get the money from that and all the riches that brings, Man City can just go out and buy 2 or 3 marquee signings if they think there's any risk that they're going to lose out. And so we're actually trying to catch up with a team that can always take an extra step ahead of us.
Yeah, sorry, James. I'd just like to make a point in favour of FSG, just to keep a bit of balance. We have to remember that Chelsea went out last season, or the season before, I think it might have been the season before, and they bought Havertz and Werner, right? Havertz, card score. He's a very, very nice number 10. But Havertz is the Dele Alli of the modern day. Nobody's realised this yet, but doesn't do that much. Doesn't score as much as he should, doesn't assist as much as he should. He's the Dele Alli of the modern day. And Dele Alli had a couple of good seasons. Then Werner. Liverpool.
I don't know what's happened to him.
Well, I think Matty made the point that Liverpool used Werner as a smokescreen to get Jota, and I couldn't have agreed with him more. Honest to God, I think that's the way Liverpool do the business. They go this way and then they go that way. So we need to remember where the market's at. When Werner and Havertz are the top prospects and everybody's talking about them, and Liverpool don't go and get them, and then it turns out they're a bit shit, that needs to be remembered in context, because they can't go out and sign an unproven 21-year-old that hasn't actually done it yet for huge money either. So the context needs to be going in, and then you've got COVID. A club like ours, when it doesn't know what's going on, can't go out and spend mega money because it just doesn't have that financial play. Now, I reckon Liverpool genuinely could go out and spend 150 million this summer if they want to, financially speaking, and still be okay. And that's because we haven't splayed. So there needs to be a balance there.
Yeah, I think that, the way United continued to be successful is they built a core, which we've got. We have a core of a best Premier League, starting lineup, and they bought 2 players every summer. They didn't go crazy or anything like that. They just picked 2 players, tried to build replacements for those that they think were just getting at the tipping point of starting to decline in their ability. And we haven't. We've spent 2 summers of really not signing anybody. So what worries me is we're starting to hit that tip over of players might start to decline in quality and things like that, and we haven't refreshed it. And normally when you do the 2, someone can miss, someone can hit, and Klopp's got a great track record of being successful, but it's just we're not doing it, are we? We're not refreshing on a constant basis, which doesn't give the same challenge to the existing players in the squad because everyone gets used to playing against each other and training together. So there's no real, this person's doing something different.
Yeah.
It just can get stale for me.
I agree.
Kris, feel free to head off. Thank you for joining
lovely,
us.
Lovely to see you, lads. I'm sorry if I insulted anyone in the Russian community.
See you soon in the next one.
See you soon, mate.
Yeah, no, plenty of good points there. And again, I think I saw somewhere that within FFP, which I know is controversial in itself, we could go out and spend about £270 million this summer if we wanted to. We won't. But, we often have considered FSG to be quite clever, or the infrastructure they've built in Liverpool to be quite clever in regards to transfers and money. They've built a good reputation there, but surely there's a part where, we can't just go out one summer and attempt to almost start rebuilding the team completely. Surely there should have been a constant stream of signings here and there coming in. We're getting to a point where we're leaving it too late to have a seamless transition into, phase 2, which a lot of people are calling it. Do you think that's the case, Matty?
Yeah, to an extent. Anthony just said a comment there about we still waiting for Coutinho, Sturridge, and Gini replacements, and I think that
Curtis Jones was most of them.
Yeah, and I do think Harvey Elliott coming back is another one. But I think we've been victim of our own success in some aspects, because I think that when Coutinho went for that mega money, I think FSG are just clinging on, thinking that someone else might go for that mega money to reinvest it again. Because when Coutinho's went, we've then went on and won the 2 biggest cups that you want to win with the money that without him going, we wouldn't have won them cups, because we wouldn't have bought Alisson and Van Dijk, and I strongly believe they were pivotal to the success. I think we probably still would have got Fabinho. But I do think that that's the issue. Like, they aren't replacing players who were pivotal for that success. So Gini Wijnaldum being the main one, always available, always done a job. And a lot of people have been moaning about Trent this year, about how he doesn't get back for certain goals. Trent's never got back. He's always been someone who goes further forward. But Gini Wijnaldum covered him so well, you never noticed it. Now, you've took him out the team, and there's nobody there who covers Trent at all, really, to the capabilities that Gini did. Gini gets a lot of stick, but I'd take Gini Wijnaldum back tomorrow if we could. So I do think that I don't think we need to go out and spend mad money. I think we need a midfielder and an attacker. I strongly believe that Jota was the long-term replacement for Sadio Mane anyway. So I think Salah, I think he's a freak who's going to continue playing like Cristiano Ronaldo for years and years and years, just the way he looks after himself, the way he dedicates himself to the game. So I don't think you need to worry about that position. And then you've got the argument of what right winger in world football is going to come into Liverpool when Mo Salah's ahead of them, when they could go to, say, an Arsenal and play every week. So I do think Liverpool really just the back line is strong, but we've seen with Costas coming in, Robbo's upped his game. But then it's the same with Trent. What right back's going to come into Liverpool? We're going to have to rely on kids, because we can't go and buy a right back, because who's going to come to Liverpool and dislodge Trent? They're not. He's the best right back in the world. Centre backs, again, you're then competing with Joel Matip, who I think is up there with one of the best centre halves in world football. And then below him, you've got Canate, who's looked a machine since he came in. So I do think the back line is sound. We don't need anyone there. Midfield, I think we need to replace Gini Wijnaldum, because we never done it. And we only need an attacker. That's it. Like, I'm not one of them who thinks we need to go and buy all these players. I just strongly believe we need 2 players. But then I think Klopp is very stubborn, because he only wants certain players. But I've got nothing against that. I'd rather us go and buy smart, buy players that we want, rather than just buying someone for the sake of fans going, a new player, yeah, boss. Do you know what I mean? I do think that the player he wants in that central midfield role, I strongly believe, is Jude Bellingham. So when you get him, it could be waiting 2 years, but I don't see why we don't go and buy a stopgap until you can get Bellingham, make them world class, and then sell them on. If you was to go and sell someone like Andy Robbo now, who we bought for practically free. We bought him for 8 million, but sold Hull Kevin Stewart for 8 million. You could sell Andy Robbo for 90 mil now. Why can't we go and buy someone as a stopgap until we could get someone like Jude Bellingham and make a profit on them and then use that money to buy Bellingham? That's doable. But I just think because we've been so successful with Klopp, with a very thin squad, why would FSG change it? They're making a lot of money. They're increasing the value of Liverpool by the year. Why would they go and spend more money? And that's the interesting thing. When Klopp does depart, what happens?
I agree with everything you've said, Matty. I think COVID is the anomaly in the squad availability, really, isn't it? You know, with what's happened, and players not being available and stuff like that, and having to isolate. But yeah, Klopp likes a small squad. He's famous for it. You know, he trusts the people that he trusts. For me, I'd agree. I think maybe 2 midfielders and maybe an unpredictable attacker. Not someone that, like an Origi replacement. I think he's pretty much run his course, but just someone that can, on the development road, to do something spectacular. Or maybe we can turn it into. Is probably where else I'd go, but that's it. Everything else feels very comfortable.
For me, I agree with both of you. I think another midfielder who's not a Fabinho replacement, but more of a Genie replacement, who's a runner and a good cover option, as you said, covers Trent. But I do think we need someone else who can play the role of Thiago as well. Maybe Curtis Jones can fill that void, but so far I'm not seeing enough of it. I know he's been injured, but when he has played, I just haven't seen it consistently. So I feel like that's somewhere that we could invest as well. And then obviously we need another attacker as well. The issue Ayush makes a decent point that City have a small squad. They have 15, 16 starter quality players and some academy ballers in there as well, which is a good point. They don't have a gigantic squad as opposed to probably a Chelsea. I think their squad's really inflated. But ultimately, once you go beyond the starting 11, they've still got 2-3 players who can fill into an exceptionally high quality in each position, which is what we just don't have.
Yeah, I agree with that because we have got 11 world-class players, and then if it drops off. But the only issue with Curtis Jones is he doesn't get played in his position. Like what Kris said before, we aren't playing to some of the players' strengths. Curtis Jones is a central midfielder. When Steven Gerrard worked in the academy, he said that he was one of the best players he's ever worked with, and Gerrard's worked with some phenomenal footballers. Curtis Jones is so much more effective through the middle, but we consistently seem to play him on the left because who knows why. But he's a lot more effective in the middle. It's like Harvey Elliott. I do think when he comes back, I think we're resting a lot on young Harvey's shoulders, to be honest with you, because of the start. I think even FSGR, they're probably thinking, why should we go and spend 40, 50 million pounds on a central midfielder when we've got this kid coming through who is arguably going to be a generational talent? But then you rest. Then will that guy get to Harvey? Like if he has a bad game, he's thinking, I need to do it all, stuff like that. So I do think we do only need a few additions, like City. Like with that comment, City do have a very small squad, and their academy players are phenomenal. You're talking about Foden, Cole Palmer, etc., etc. Liverpool have got that as well. If we just went and bought 2 or 3 more players to add to the depth of the first team, we have got some phenomenal players coming through the academy. You think of Tyler Morton, Curtis Jones, Harvey Elliott. You've got that Musialowski as well, who looks like a talent coming up through the attackers. You've got Peter Luger, who's coming up as a goalkeeper. We've got
Cade Gordon.
We've got really good players. Gordon as well, coming through. So we could have a model like City where you have 15, 16 world-class players. But the issue with Liverpool is we've got 11 world-class players. Our starting 11 walks into any team in world football. After that, it's a bit hit and miss. And it's like Thiago. He is unbelievable. He's one of the best midfielders I've ever seen play for Liverpool. But it's just keeping him fit. It's impossible to keep him fit. And this injury person who we brought in does seem to have worked because Matty stayed fit this season, but it doesn't seem to have worked.
First time ever, isn't it?
Yeah, but it doesn't seem to have worked with Thiago. And that's my frustration. I do feel as though the depth isn't good enough, but then the academy players we are coming through aren't being used in their position. Like Ayush just said there, Curtis is very much like Jack Grealish. I've watched Curtis for years. He's a fantastic footballer. And when he has played central midfield, has been some of his best games for Liverpool. When he plays on the left wing, he hasn't got the pace. He can't be a winger in this Liverpool side. Our wingers have to be rapid, and Curtis isn't rapid. He's more of a central midfielder. And when he does play central midfield, he's class. He's skillful. He can ping a ball from outside the box. He's not afraid to take risks. But we just aren't playing him there, and that is a frustration.
Well, we're sort of long beyond the Arsenal game, and I feel much better after a stream like this. It's sort of like therapy for me. I don't know about you guys, but I feel much better already. Even today, it was kind of hanging over me, and seeing all the negativity on social media as well. It's easy to kind of get carried away with it and start saying quite stupid over the top things. But I think we've had a very mature conversation about it. And I hope
it's a
everyone
game, isn't it? It's 0-0. There's a second leg.
Exactly. We're at half time. Yeah.
We had a bad game and they didn't score. That's all right.
Yeah. And there's no need to be one extreme or the other. You can acknowledge it was a very bad game. That doesn't mean our whole season's fallen apart. We're still in that cup competition. We're still in the Champions League. The league title's not absolutely gone. We'll see what happens tomorrow, but who knows what can happen. But thank you very much to...
By the way, Chelsea beat City tomorrow, Liverpool beat Brentford. We're back in the mixer for that league.
And that's what we'll leave it on. That's the sort of positivity.
Yeah, let's not leave it on. Is anyone of the opinion we're getting Pogba on a free? Because I would lose my mind.
Someone else comment something quickly. But no, thank you very much to Matty, James, Kris before he left as well. If you are new in the comments section, please do make sure that you leave a subscription to the LFC Transfer Room. We've got many more streams like this pretty much every night from now on, as well as match watch-alongs, transfer watches, debate rooms, all that good stuff. Make sure that you do subscribe. But James, Matty, thank you very much for keeping us company on this Friday night, and I hope you enjoy your weekends. But we from the LFC Transfer Room will say goodbye there, and we'll see you all in the next video.
See you later, mate.